Gil Ahrens joins us now on the program. Gil has just written a book entitled Shattered, Shaken, and Stirred, Reconnecting with What Matters After Loss and Adversity. The book tells a true story of what happened when Gil's family was involved in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Is this still a difficult story to tell, or have you kind of worked your way through that night when all this happened? And
how long ago was that, Gil?
It was a little over 7 years ago.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
And now you can answer Jerry's question.
So, is it difficult? Yeah, it's always difficult to relive some of those events. And I would not want anyone to necessarily go through what I've been through, or my wife, or our friends and family too.
And to some degree continuing to go through.
Well, that's it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's an ongoing journey, and an event like this affects lots of people, not just us.
Yeah.
All right,
Tell us what happened that night of October 2002.
Well, my wife and I had just given birth to our 3-week-old baby girl.
Oh my goodness, 3 weeks
3
old.
weeks old. And we had, my wife and I had been married for several years and had tried to have children unsuccessfully. And here we are, this little blessing child comes into our lives, and my cousin was getting married in Denver, and we thought, what a great opportunity. We'll go to celebrate his marriage and wedding, and we'll show off our new prized, our blessing.
And there they are.
Well, I guess so.
At that time, you were you had a very successful career going.
Career.
Life was really looking pretty sweet at that time.
I had a good career on Wall Street. My wife had just finished a master's program in counseling psychology. We were active in our church, and life was good. And of course, we have our hiccups and bumps along the road.
Sure.
But we always thought that adversity and some of these bad things, well, they're not going to happen to us, right? We were born on the right side of the tracks, and we worked hard and paid our taxes. And returning back to our hotel in Denver after this wedding reception, we became someone else. We were hit by this drunk driver, and life literally changed in an instant.
Could you just briefly kind of tell, what was that like, and how serious was it, and what were the ramifications right after?
Yeah, so as Jerry alluded to, the driver of the car was very intoxicated, going about 95 miles an hour. We're going about 60. It's one of these undivided highways in Denver. And, it was a bomb that went off, frankly. My wife broke her neck and shattered her femur, and frankly is paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair. But
today she's a quadriplegic.
She's a quadriplegic. She's made incredible recovery. So I don't want to say that she's not had any recovery, because right after the accident, we all prayed. After she survived, because that was a question, but we all prayed, Lord, just give her the use of her arms and hands back so that she could just hold our baby.
Sure.
And that's, what every mother wants to do that. And so that was our sole concern. And then through hard work and prayer, and she's a Texan, okay, so she's got that determination.
No, your wife was very seriously injured. You were also seriously injured. You recovered from your injuries, but you had a 3-week-old baby.
3-week-old.
Yeah, so how did she get the use of her arms back?
Well, so my wife, through prayer, and in her mind, right, she had to make a decision to fight and work with God, right, and just try to reconnect or not. And so there's a point I tell about in the book where there's a CD player in the hospital, and the CD is stuck, and it's skipping and going back and forth, around and around, and she can't reach the call button to alert the nurses, and she makes up in her mind the determination to go for it and say, I'm not going to let paralysis get in the way of fixing this stuck CD. So she, over the course of several hours, painfully in her mind, moving her hand there, and then eventually she's able to move her thumb and hit the call button.
Wow. So that was a good thing for her to do.
That was a defining moment that said that she was not going to be defined by what the physicians told her she wasn't capable of.
And that's part of the reason, probably most of the reason, she has recovered to the extent that she has recovered.
It's a huge, huge impact, right? That just one tiny little victory sets the stage for lots of other wins.
How did you deal with that? I mean, all of a sudden, you've hit the wall. The life that you had expected to have, that the two of you expected to have, no longer exists. How did you deal with that in terms of your relationship with God, anger, bitterness, a feeling of rejection, defeat. Did you experience all of those at one time or another?
Yes. Yes, I think that's only normal because there's no operating manual in life when we're growing up for how to deal with the unexpected and the unfortunate part of life, right? We're taught on how to deal with good things and how to prepare for good things, but not for the things that throw us real curveballs. So yes, there's anger. There was immense frustration. There still is. I mean, we can't do certain things. I was a Wall Street guy and I was an athlete, and every guy wants to have broad shoulders and thinks he can take on the world. Well, in this situation, I couldn't.
Why?
Of course, and that was a mistake. I mean, you have to try, okay?
Yeah.
But trying based on my own strength, it was a failure, right? And a lot of success that we often give ourselves in life, we think that it's because of our own effort.
But there's a lot of guys like you, a lot
Yeah.
of type A personalities. They may not be on Wall Street, but they have a lot of similarities. And they do think they can do it all.
Right.
And sometimes they hit the wall really bad because they refuse to admit that they can't do it. You came to a place to where you admitted you had to have other people in your life.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, but I just want to get to this thing that's just so amazing to me. We're going to talk about how you dealt with the insurance companies and stuff like that. But this is just so amazing that you were actually advised to divorce Kim.
Well, yeah, that.
Could you explain that?
I will, and then I'll get the whole point about surrender is really important. But we're in the hospital, and the social workers meeting with all the people in the ICU, in the recovery unit, to advise them of what their options are. And typically it's about resources for counseling or, more importantly, financial aid, because these injuries are massive. And I would say to anybody, look around, there's always somebody that has it worse. But the social worker met with us and outlining all these things, but it was very quickly apparent that we didn't qualify because the minimum threshold for getting any kind of assistance, at least in California, is like $24,000 of net income. Well, I made more than that, but not so much that I wasn't going to be impacted by this incident. So I said, well, out of curiosity, what do people like us do? I mean, kind of normal folks. And she said, well, most people get divorced because if you do that, and she kind of had this glint and gleam of knowledge in her eye, she said, well, then one of you can file for bankruptcy and get all the kind of assistance you would need. And my wife and I looked at each other like, what is this? Right? It was a non-starter. And yet, of course, in these types of incidents, it's like 75, 80% people get divorced.
Yeah,
It's
that's
crazy.
amazing. That's amazing.
Again, to try to beat the system.
At a time when they need each other
Right.
the most.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that was heartbreaking, frankly, because it was almost, she didn't officially recommend that as a course of action, but it was the most financially prudent given the way our system is set up.